You're watching Reality Check. America is on a razor's edge. We're now into Thursday night India time, and we still don't have an answer as to who's won the American election. But this is where we are at the moment. And remember, the picture is changing every minute. At the moment, Joe Biden is getting closer and closer to the finish line. Most channels and most credible networks have placed him just 17 seats away from defeating Donald Trump. He's at 253 to Donald Trump's 214. Remember, 270. The Electoral College is the halfway mark to become president. Now, that's because 5 US states, which constitute 71 Electoral College seats, are still counting their votes. And that's why it's on a cliffhanger. Counting is still on in Arizona, Nevada, Georgia, Pennsylvania, and North Carolina. Now, of these 5 states, Biden is leading narrowly in Arizona and Nevada, and Trump in the remaining 3 states, even though Biden appears to be closing in some of those states. By the way, Fox News and Associated Press have called Arizona for Biden. That's brought him just 6 short of a victory. Other channels and platforms, as I mentioned, haven't yet. But Fox and AP have already called Arizona for Biden. But regardless, Donald Trump has threatened, as is his wont, to file lawsuits, and in fact has gone ahead, I believe, and filed lawsuits to try and stall the counting process, and has made it clear that he believes this is yet another example of the Democrats and the fake news media stealing the election from him. But the big question still remains, and I think this is the question that we're going to grapple with tonight, as we have on other nights on the show, as to how it became so close. What should have been a landslide by most estimates has turned into a cliffhanger. Joining me to try and decode that, I have with me Neha Dewan, National Director, South Asians for Biden, is on the show tonight. Preeti Davra, Managing Director, Asian Century Communications, spokespersons of Howdy Modi, is on the show. We have G. Balachandran, who's a psephologist, also is the uncle of Kamala Harris, the vice presidential candidate for the Democrats. And Philip Bump, political reporter, The Washington Post, is with us, as is Patsy Widakuswara, the correspondent for the Voice of America. Patsy, I hope I got your name right. But
very close.
Okay. Neha Dewan, let me start with you. I don't want to get too much into the question of who's going to win, because each side will obviously claim victory. But I really want to try to understand from you why you think it has become so close, because everyone thought it would be a blue landslide. The pollsters predicted it. All of you kept saying it. But Trump has put up a very strong showing, has he not? Where do you think you went wrong?
So I don't think it's a matter of us going wrong. I mean, this is just what you always expect in terms of coming down to battleground states, right? That's what it's called, battleground states. The states that are predicted to go a certain way blue went blue. And this was expected that this was going to be what it was going to be. I think I've mentioned this before. We actually don't necessarily trust the polls entirely, because they're just a snapshot in time.
Sure.
So, with respect to what South Asians for Biden has done, has just essentially been ignoring the polls, just continuing to do the work that we did.
Right. But let me put that to you differently. What I meant was that given Donald Trump's record, given that everything we saw, the mishandling of the pandemic, the faltering economy, and so on and so forth, the fountain of misinformation, all of that, the fact that he still remained a strong contender, that Joe Biden couldn't beat him easily, surely you'd admit that somewhere along the line, you also needed to look within, no?
No, I mean, I think that, look, if you can instill fear in people, that's always going to work, right? If you just spread misinformation and instill fear, that's what drive essentially a person's vote. And that's what President Trump has done. Vice President Biden has worked on a platform of, positivity and explaining his platform, as opposed to spelling misinformation. So it's not necessarily in terms of being scared or where we went wrong. It's really when you just spread fear, this is what happens.
Philip Bump, is it as simple as saying that Trump's, some would say, remarkable performance, I mean, even if he wins or loses, is just because of instilling fear?
Spelling misinformation. So it's not necessarily.
I think that the upshot here is that President Trump was able to turn out voters that weren't being captured by the polls. We're not exactly sure why that was, but it's clear that there were a lot of people, as in 2016, who came out to the polls to vote for President Trump who may not have been expected to come out to vote. That said, I feel like it's a little early to talk about what sort of response the United States had to President Trump. I mean, if you look at the popular vote, for example, Joe Biden's already got a much larger popular vote lead over Trump than did Hillary Clinton 4 years ago, and it's growing. You know, and there's still votes being counted in California. So the rationale for it, clearly Donald Trump had a message that resonated with a lot of different voters. He has for 4 years, but it's always been a minority of the country.
Okay. Patsy, would you agree or with that? That it's premature to get into why? Because as Philip said, it is true that Biden is way ahead in the popular vote. Trump has vastly improved his popular vote performance from 2016, but Biden is still ahead. But again, do the Democrats? I mean, is none of this on the Democrats?
Well, I think what we all need to remember at this point is that the votes are still being counted. At this point, it is correct that former Vice President Joe Biden does have a clearer path towards 270, but it doesn't mean that it's a guaranteed win for him. So at this point, all the votes are being counted. And having said that, it does also seem quite optimistic because mostly now what we're counting are those mail-in ballots, right?
Sure.
Those mail-in ballots are coming in that have been overwhelmingly for Joe Biden, in some places even more than 70%. So it does look optimistic for the Biden camp. However, there's still a lot of unknowns at this point. We are talking about lawsuits, for example, in Pennsylvania, Michigan, and a recount in Wisconsin, even though, most analysts would agree that even with the recount, it would hardly change the results in that state because most recounts will only generate, a difference of a couple of hundreds of votes and not thousands. So there's still a lot of questions up in the air. So I would caution anyone to make a conclusion at this point and just see how it plays out in the next coming days. Okay.
Mr. Balachandran, I mean, I don't know if you've had a chance to be in touch with Kamala Harris at all or her people, but what's the sense, and if at all you have, the same question to you, what's the sense that you are getting from them that looking at the results, why things seem to have gone off script to the extent that it has become very tight? Because as Patsy said, it's not clear. I mean, while it does appear that the Biden-Kamala Harris combination could win, it doesn't seem that clear yet. So would there be any missteps or would they look back and say, what is it that we perhaps didn't get right?
No, Srinivasan, let me say one thing.
Sure.
Last time Hillary Clinton won 12 states.
Right.
Trump has not been able to change any of them. And he's not even close in any of them except to some extent in Nevada. He's trailing behind.
Right.
Whereas Biden flipped two of the major states that he had won last time, Michigan and Wisconsin. And he's leading in Arizona. And he's closing very strongly in Pennsylvania, which I think will win because there are a lot of undecided the mail-in votes. And the mail-in votes that were cast, about 80% were Democrats. Okay?
Right.
So I do not, except for the fact that Ohio, he has not been able to flip. I do not subscribe to the view that they have not been able to achieve what they intend to do. And for the simple reason, good or bad, Trump had maintained all through his 4-year tenure a very strong 40 to 45% approval rate among Republicans. That has remained consistent over the period.
Okay.
So there was no reason to expect that somehow he'll just fall over and fall dead.
No, of course.
Now, if he wins, if Biden wins Pennsylvania and Georgia, and Nevada in any case there, then it becomes a landslide. For instance, 253 plus 20 Pennsylvania, 16 Georgia, 11 Arizona, 6 Nevada takes you well over more than 300 than what Trump got last time, 304.
Okay, so
I do not entirely subscribe.
Okay, you don't believe. Right. Okay.
Now
but hold on. Let me move on. I'll come back to you, sir.
But wait. Now, Wait. Next, let me answer your second question on Kamala. I had not spoken to them, but this morning, both Kamala and called twice. In fact, I was quite surprised. At one time, I was asleep. At 4 o'clock in the morning, she called.
Okay.
But at 6 o'clock, she called. She spoke to my wife and parents in Mexico.
Okay.
My daughter in Washington, everybody.
Okay.
And very cheerful.
Okay.
Now, that hardly indicates, I mean, somebody calling and going on about how are you and laughing like that, hardly indicates the psychology of a person who is under tense
So
conditions. Okay.
she's in
I mean, you don't
she's in
call
good
a person
shape.
if you're
Okay.
tense.
Let me.
You don't call.
Okay. All
Yeah,
right. You're saying
okay.
that that's a sign of confidence. Preeti Davra, is
And-
it fair to say?
And in any case, wait, Srinivasan.
Sir, I have to move on. I'll come back to you, sir,
I'm-
please.
I'm-
I have to move on. I'll come back to you.
No, I'm wearing the blue. I'm wearing the blue scarf right now, okay?
Okay. I see. I missed the political symbolism of your scarf/mask, but I see it now. But Preeti Davra,
Yes,
are
yes,
you,
you
are
should
you,
always do it.
Preeti Davra, okay, Preeti Davra, is it fair to say that as Neha Devan said, that the fact that Trump has managed to even make it close is largely just fear-mongering? Or is that
Well,
somewhat
I
unfair?
actually think that liberals should be fairly concerned about how close this has come. And I would say that they put up an unobjectionable candidate, a moderate candidate, a seasoned candidate. He was running against a candidate who had a terrible record on the pandemic, and there were other ethical issues along with it. So I think that it should have been easier than it has been. And I personally think that it very deeply runs to two things. One is that Trump was seen to be
Right.
doing
Preeti,
well
I
on
just
the
want to interrupt
economy.
for a second to say, I think you put your phone on speaker. So if you could just take that off because we're getting an echo, in case you've done that.
I'm actually speaking from the Bluetooth.
Oh, okay. We're still getting an echo. I'm not sure why. But do go ahead.
It's okay. You can carry on. I'll try and fix the problem.
All right, we'll come back to you in a second, Preeti, because we are getting that somewhat of a distressing echo. But Neha Devan, you know, if one were to advance your argument that those numbers do reflect the fact that the politics of fear has worked, what would you see that as reflecting the state of America today? That so many millions of voters, including in states that have traditionally been blue, they may have been flipped by Trump last time, but the hope was the Democrats would flip them back, are subscribing to that. What is this telling us about America?
So I think that as some of the other commentators have said, not everything has come back yet. You don't even know how many ballots are out there at this point. So I don't think you can essentially say, well, what does this say about the state of America? There has been a record turnout. The most number of people who voted in an election. And I think that speaks volumes too, traditionally for a country that doesn't have these kinds of numbers.
Sure.
We've had 100 million people who've cast votes prior to election day. And I think that also says something. You have people standing in lines in non-battleground states in cold weather
Of course.
just to exercise their right to vote. So I think that's also telling in terms of where we are as a country today. And look, everybody should be taking their right to vote seriously, who they identify with a candidate. A candidate just doesn't speak to one issue. A candidate speaks to many issues. So you don't know, if somebody's supporting President Trump. My boss is supporting President Trump, and it's not because he's a racist. He's supporting him on different issues. So I don't think you can say what does this say about the state of America. I mean,
Okay.
looking at on the Biden camp, would I have liked to see it be a little bit less narrow? Absolutely, but we don't know. It's because the race isn't over yet.
Okay.
It hasn't been. We don't know what it's going to look like at the end.
Okay. All right. Let me try to go back to Preeti. To the point, to my earlier question about this largely being for Trump the politics of fear.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you saw the Economist cover recently, while it said that why Joe Biden must win, it had a whole section on the things that Trump got right. And I think the things that they mentioned were extremely important. One is that on the economy, he was doing exceptionally well. The unemployment was at the lowest level. The wages were rising of the lowest population of America after like 45 years. The trade deals that he did with China and others, trying to get jobs back. So I think there was a lot of confidence in him economically. And the other thing is that, gods and guns are a very important issue in America, and it should not be, overlooked at all. So I'm not very surprised that I lived in Texas, for example,
God
for
and
7
guns.
years. And God and guns are like, they go to the heart of American values. And the fact that he's appointed these conservative judges who are pro-life, right before the election, I think it must have had a huge impact. So, he means business and people have clarity on what his agenda is.
Hold on.
A lot of shy voters.
Okay.
There's a lot of shy voters who went in and, who didn't want to be called racist or sexist. But when they went in, they went and voted on these values that they believe in.
Sure. No, so I'm saying beyond whether the polls got it right or wrong. Let me just push back on that for a second, because beyond God and guns, and by the way, Trump himself doesn't appear to be very religious at all, even though he might be flirting with evangelicals and so on and so forth. But beyond that, what about the fear-mongering? Because one can't discount that at all. I mean, he has had a long and, I must say, terrible record of making racially charged remarks, inciting racial tensions, stoking majoritarian fear. We can't turn our eyes away from that at all.
No, not at all. I think it has been unprecedented, and I think it's been embarrassing for America to have a candidate who has questioned the legitimacy of these elections, where he has no basis to do that. I don't think that even the Supreme Court would have entertained it. He was just doing it for face saving. So there, absolutely, it's absolutely shameful. I live in Singapore, and if you read what the Chinese press is saying, what the Singapore press is saying, they're saying so much for democracy in America. At the end of the day, the system has to work.
Okay.
A, they can't get the voting right, and second, the candidate is devaluing the process. So both things are not looking good for the world.
So Philip, I guess that's my point. While I take the point made by many of you that you can't start decoding why people have voted the way they have till you have the full picture. But I guess to those of us watching from a distance, the fact that somebody like Trump, with that sort of record, could still get this far, surely does lead to some soul searching within what's going on with America.
Well, I think something that we learned 4 years ago was not necessarily that that what Trump was doing worked as much as it wasn't disqualifying. And so one of the things we've seen over the course of Donald Trump's presidency is, yes, he has done these things that are very much outside the norm of what we expect a president to do, but it didn't really bother people. The economy was doing well prior to the pandemic. I talked to a lot of voters in Pennsylvania who said, my business was doing well, and that's why I'm supporting Trump. And so it wasn't that they were all, enthusiastic, we stand by, let's build the wall, yada, yada, yada. There were a lot of voters who were simply responding to the other things that they liked about his presidency. Now, what does that say? That's a whole different question, that people would prioritize those things over other things. But yes, it is absolutely the case that Donald Trump's campaigns rely on fear. We saw it we saw it before he was president. In 2014, he was amplifying those concerns, 16, 18, and in 2020. I don't think it really worked this year, but fundamentally for a lot of voters, they were able to just put all the stuff aside that he was saying and doing. It certainly had a target audience, but for other people, they simply either may not pay much attention to politics or felt like things were going okay.
Okay. Sir, Mr. Balachandran, you wanted to come in.
Srinivasan, may I say something?
Please, sir.
Look, you're talking about fear.
Yes, go ahead, sir.
A week before, all the gun sales goes up to the record level. All the shops say we are closing our gun shops because it's run on precipitate ammunition. Then Washington and other states, they board up all the shops. New York, it's not because they are celebrating Christmas. Of course, it's because of fear. There's no point in saying that Trump's rhetoric is something of a peace and goodwill on earth, okay?
Of course.
Let's be honest about it. You may be a Trump supporter. That doesn't mean you have to say that he has done economy well. And it is true, there may be many people who put economy before the COVID and other things. I mean, they might be like Indians saying, look, whatever will happen, let me go and work. So
Yes.
these are possible. But
Yes.
let's not say that somehow Trump is a much misunderstood man. He's a well understood man as a, what do you call, a boor, and a, what do you call, anyway, I won't use any more word, okay?
Well, yeah, let's try to be a little circumspect. Let's, as they say, when they go low, we have to go high. But we have very little time. Just a last quick comment, Patsy. Do you want to take a shot at predicting the outcome, or is that a?
Oh, no, we don't predict the outcomes. I think we've all learned from 2016 that that's a very, very bad game to play. And I think another thing that we've learned from 2016, right? I mean, this is about polling data, right? We put a lot of faith in polling data in 2020 because we are getting this information from pollsters that we have learned from the mistakes of 2016.
Right.
We have better quality polling in these key battleground states. But it turns out that, you know, the margin of error was quite large. And it turns out that the lead that Joe Biden has had, according to the polls in these key battleground states, turn out to be somewhat incorrect in many instances. Now, again, we don't know yet until all the votes are counted, and then we shall see just how accurate those polling data is. But it really just goes to show that, you know, pundits and journalists, we're all struggling to understand this American electorate and how they vote and what are the reasons motivating their votes. And so this is something to consider, not just for 2020, but also for the elections ahead. A lot of soul searching for journalists, for pollsters, as well as for Americans.
Okay. And I would think for America. But anyway, we'll have to leave it there. Things very, very excitingly poised. Thank you all so much for joining me tonight. Thanks so much for watching Reality Check. That's all the time we have. Good night.